And look, yeah, one of the really interesting things that has come out of the coronavirus situation is the way that many people have adapted their businesses to help make up for shortfalls in medical supplies. You might have heard that story, I think it was last week, about how the Timboon Distillery have contributed to the production of hand sanitizer, which has been distributed through Southwest Healthcare. Now, there's another local business that you might not have heard about called WastedProps, who make props for films. But they're about to start making personal protective equipment for health workers, things like gowns and goggles. Jason Tully is the owner of WastedProps. Jason, good morning to you.
Good morning, Jeremy. Pleasure to be on your show.
Well, thanks for joining us. Now, look, before we talk about your plans to make gowns and goggles, just tell us a bit more about WastedProps, because most people, myself included, may not have heard of you before. What is WastedProps about?
Yeah, so I started out about 5 years ago building commission pieces of replicas from movies and games, and found that I had an affinity to build replicas. A bit of a stroke of luck, and got myself into the film industry, and have done a few by this stage feature films and a couple of short films as well.
Yeah, right. The things you were making before that, who was buying them? Were they just people who wanted something that looked like something from a film? Or
Yeah, essentially. So I started out with a handful of friends, and based a lot of my props on the pretty popular game franchise Fallout.
Right.
And then it started to go from there with Star Wars replicas and other things like that.
So what sort of things have you made then? And perhaps what have been some of the more interesting or unusual requests you might have had for props?
Well, I also do a little bit of cosplay as well. I go to Supernova and PAX conventions in Melbourne, dressing up as various characters from games and movies. So probably the one that I've been most proud of, which was a personal project of my own, was the replica Tesla rifle from Fallout 4.
Right.
I spent probably a good couple of 100 hours on this thing, 3D printing parts of it, and making it, coming from the game, which was never designed to be a real life prop. The engineering involved to make it so it actually sort of functioned like the one in the game in real life. That was probably the hardest part, and probably the best part about it.
Right. Yeah.
The troubleshooting and the engineering part.
Which I imagine is a large part of the skill of making all this sort of stuff, is it? Because I imagine you're probably just often going off what you've seen on a screen. You don't actually have a plan or something to build from.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the short films I worked on, Damon Runner, which is on YouTube, I was given a whole heap of concept art, and I had to work around how I would make this concept art come to life. I think originally I had about 2 or 3 images of armor and a few weapons and stuff that I had to replicate as close as possible for the director and producer. And the final result was pretty epic.
Yeah, wow. So look, it doesn't seem to be an immediately obvious link from that sort of stuff to making surgical gowns. So how did this happen?
Yeah, well, I suppose I was pretty much born a tinkerer. I've got an affinity to the engineering part of society, I suppose. It's a bit of a hobby. And yeah, I was approached by one of my friends who works at WDHS. He's an electrician there, and management had been talking to a few staff saying, okay, if we have shortages of these supplies, who can we talk to locally that might be able to manufacture them? So yeah, my friend Matt, he came to me and he said, hey mate, what can we do? And so I put my thinking cap on.
Yep. So gowns, what else have you been asked to work on?
Yeah, so we're doing protective eyewear as well, getting that laser cut, working off an original design that is, was readily available, and so we've adjusted it to suit our needs. So we're just about to pull the pin on production for the lenses in the next few days, and the first prototype gowns have been manufactured and handed out to the staff to give us some feedback on how they think they go. Yeah,
right. Now, how hard has it been then for you to? Because I imagine making something that's to be worn comes with a whole lot of different set of challenges to making a prop or whatever it is. How hard was it for you to get your head around making a garment that works?
Yeah, so previously I'd built armour pieces for for short films, and so the step going from using hard materials like harder plastics, 3D printed parts, leather, strapping and stuff to a thin plastic was a little bit of a jump. But I'm a commercial graphic designer by trade, so being able to do the CAD drawings and stuff wasn't a huge step for me. It was pretty much prototyping. Once I got the rough prototype down, we were able to make some minor alterations and essentially improve on designs that are already available.
I see. Now, when it comes to the manufacturing side as well, then what sort of capacity do you have, and what sort of access have you got to whatever's necessary to make this stuff?
Yeah, so I've been in talks with Josh from Nigretta of Hamilton, who I'm friends with, who's helping with the laser cutting of the lenses. And he mentioned that there's a business down in Portland Waterjet Cutting. So I got in touch with Jamie down there, and we had chats with him on how we could potentially make bulk gowns down the track. And yeah, went down and used his large format waterjet cutter, and we are able to make bulk amounts if need be on his machine.
I see. Okay. So look, up till now, I gather this has also just been a bit of a sideline for you, not necessarily your main thing. Has that shifted radically now? Has this become your primary focus?
So for the last week and a half, I'm on holidays. I work at the Hamilton Spectator as graphics, and so we're on staff leave at the minute with a few of our staff. So I thought now's the opportunity, instead of sitting at home watching Netflix every day, I can pretty much put my hand in and help the community, and be able to support the health system in our area.
Now, and beyond our area as well, then, has there been much interest beyond Western District Health once people have found out what you're doing?
Not as yet. I've been keeping tabs on the news, pretty much Australia-wide, on other pop-up businesses on how they're going. Sometimes a video would pop up on Facebook with people manufacturing short runs of masks and stuff. Other businesses are looking down the ventilator route, which can be a little bit of a touchy subject with ventilators globally. A lot of people want to put their hand up and try and help, but there's a lot more science involved with manufacturing safe ventilators for people. So that's, you've got to be really careful, I suppose, when it comes to medical supplies for the health system. Gowns and goggles are one thing, which is just a barrier protection for the health workers, but when it comes to something that's potentially going to keep someone alive, there's a lot more engineering and a lot of other things that you've got to pretty much keep in mind when you're looking at manufacturing something like that. Yeah,
and even at that level, though, there would still be all kinds of requirements, I would imagine, around sanitisation and so on. And
exactly.
I don't know. I mean, is that posing any problems for you, or you're able to obviously do it to the required standard?
Yeah, so because these are only barriers for protecting essentially the nurses and staff, the gowns and especially the gowns will be single-use throwaway, but we have looked into the potential of having them sanitised and used more than once. That is a potential down the track, but we're looking to recycle the lenses, having them sanitised and put back into service again, potentially. So there's a couple of different ways we can go. Ideally, if we can reuse the equipment with proper sanitary requirements, then there's going to be less wastage.
Yeah.
And I like keeping that in mind as well.
Yeah, well, that's a great story. Congratulations on the initiative and getting it to this stage as well. Just before we let you go, Jason, given your sort of past as well and some of the sort of fantastic creations that you have made, have you taken the opportunity to sort of put your stamp on any of this in any way? Do the gowns have any, or the masks have any features that,
Not really. I'd like to, but I because it's a community sort of project, I don't want to brand it as my own sort of thing. There's a lot of people involved, and I'd just like to thank Jill Whiting and the community that's going to be actually stitching the sleeves on the gowns. That was one thing we couldn't avoid with making it a one piece.
Yeah.
Jamie Compton from Portland Waterjet Cutting, Josh from Nigretta of Hamilton, WDEA, and obviously Matt and the WDHS in Hamilton. So, it's crazy times.
Indeed.
And I just hope that other businesses are able to adjust what they can do to help in these times of, I suppose, pending crisis. So.
Yeah, indeed. Well, look, great that you've been able to play your part as well. Thanks for talking us through what you've been doing this morning.
No worries. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Thanks again. Jason Tully there, owner of WastedProps in Hamilton. So yes, from making props for films and replicas of things from films to making surgical gowns and